If you've been following along, you'll know that the Persona games are not necessarily my usual cup of tea, but I recently played through Persona 4 Golden and that ended up being one of my favorite games of all time. I can definitively say that now, a few months removed from it. So naturally, if one game in a franchise is that well beloved by me, I'm gonna want to see what else is going on with this franchise, what else this franchise has to offer. And luckily for me, Persona 3 just had a remake, Persona 3 Reload. So naturally, I jumped right into that as soon as I rolled credits on Persona 4 Golden. That's how these videos are coming out, relatively close to each other, not, 100 hours of gameplay in between. I was in the middle of playing Reload while I was editing the Golden Overdue review. This is going to be an overdue review for Persona 3 Reload, and hopefully by now you are starting to get a sense of what the overdue review is about. Hopefully I am too. Where in the first half I will be talking about Persona 3 Reload as if I am just reviewing this video game. The second half, however, will be more so talking about the story itself that involves spoilers because, hey, this is an overdue review, meaning a lot of you may have already played this game and completed it, and all you're looking for is just more people to talk about specific moments in this game that you either loved or hated. So that's what the overdue review is all about. Also worth keeping in mind that this is a overdue review of Persona 3 Reload coming hot off of Persona 4 Golden, so comparisons are inevitable. I understand that these games are going to be different in some ways, but in a lot of ways very similar, and your preference between the two really comes down to the singular person. So hey, just be aware, since I am playing these back to back, comparisons are inevitable. Persona 3 Reload starts off in classic Persona fashion, or at least what I am beginning to learn is classic Persona fashion based on these two entries alone. You are a transfer student starting a new school year, and your whole goal is to just go to school, get an education, and just really ace all your exams. But as always is the case, there is something else going on, something darker, something that the world does not quite know about. Every night there is this occurrence, this dark hour where every citizen in the city turns into a coffin, and there are the select few who don't. And it is these select few who are then tasked with uncovering the mysteries of this dark hour. That, of course, is where you come in, because of course, this game isn't just going to be you going to school. They never are. It's never that easy, never that simple. There's always something else going on. So as this is my second Persona game, I do sort of know the drill when it comes to the story setup here. But I understand that not everyone has, and Persona 3 Reload, more so than any other Persona game, is likely to get a larger audience because it's a remake of an older game, and a lot of people love remakes, okay? Because it's new. Where even Persona 5 is coming up on 10 years, not Persona 5 Royal, but still. Persona 5 is coming up on 10 years, and Persona 4 even more so than that. Persona 3 Reload being a 2024 release of a Persona game, I could see this being a lot of people's entry points into the franchise. As such, I will be trying to refrain myself from comparing it to Persona 4 Golden, but like I said earlier, it's probably still going to happen here and there. But yes, this is in classic Persona fashion. You do have to balance being a student while also trying to uncover this mystery that is the Dark Hour and the shadows, which are coming from Tartarus. Basically, the setup is that how we understand it in the beginning of the story is that there's this tower. It's called Tartarus. And in this tower, there are shadows, and shadows are the enemies that you'll encounter all throughout this game. This is where you do all of your combat, all of your level grinding, and all of that. It's in Tartarus. You go into Tartarus at night, which, like I said, I'm going to compare it to Persona 4 Golden. I definitely prefer over the Persona 4 Golden dungeon crawling aspect. Because in Persona 3 Reload, it is always at nighttime where you do this, whereas in Persona 4 Golden, you have to balance doing it in the afternoon, and there are a lot more social link things in the afternoon that you'll miss out on because you are going into the TV in Persona 4. But in Persona 3, there are still some social link stuff at night, but most of them are still in the daytime, so you never have to have that trade-off deciding between grinding out for more XP or spending time with your classmates, that sort of thing. I definitely liked that in Persona 3 Reload. And Tartarus is pretty much where you go just to level up and get more XP and learn new moves and be better at the game. Because every so often, a giant shadow will attack the city itself, and that is what you are essentially gearing up to do. You discover that there is a pattern to these massive shadows attacking, and basically the entire point of Tartarus is to level you up and get you prepared for those massive attacks. And I very much appreciate the constant knowing what you're preparing for in this game. Where in another game in this franchise that will go unnamed, but it uses the color yellow a lot of times you are just going through the dungeons and fighting the shadows to get to the end of a specific dungeon instead of just going there to level up to purposefully fight a single enemy. You know what I mean? I always felt like I had the goal in mind instead of just aimlessly wandering, hoping I'd get to the end of a dungeon. And yes, in Tartarus, there is still a lot of aimless wandering because, hey, it's just a lot of floors that you just continually climb up where you fight progressively higher level enemies and get more XP, that sort of thing. But they always went hand in hand into getting me prepared for those bigger battles that I knew were approaching. As with any Persona game, there is the whole calendar system. You have to balance your student life, battling the monsters, and all your social links, your friendships, and all of that. Knowing when I need to be prepared for was very helpful. And if you're anything like me, you might be thinking to yourself, oh, but Persona 3 Reload, it's a still turn-based combat system. I'm not really a turn-based guy. Hey, I'm here to tell you once again, like I learned in a different Overdue review that shall go unnamed, but is a different game in this franchise. Turn-based combat's pretty good, okay? Especially in Persona 3 Reload, a game that came out in 2024. I get the sense that Persona 3 Reload understands that turn-based isn't for everyone because of how slow it can feel. But once again, the Persona franchise does not feel slow in combat. Whether it be because the music is so upbeat, or because you're always exploiting an enemy's weakness, the combat just feels so much faster than even in a different game in this franchise that will go unnamed once again, but it was Persona 4. Anyways, it has the same concept of if you hit an enemy's weakness, you will knock them down, and once again, if you knock every enemy down, you can send everyone in there for an all-out attack that does massive damage. But something that is different from Persona 4, and I have heard that it was implemented in Persona 5, then brought into Persona 3 Reload for the remake, is the shift option, where if you're playing as the main character, you do a weakness attack on an enemy, you knock them down, and then the next enemy is still standing, right? But you don't have an element that they're weak to. What you can do in that moment is shift to a different party member that does have that element that can be used to knock down that opponent, and then you can do an all-out attack, which was a fantastic addition, if I do say so. No wonder they added it in Persona 5. But it was really good because that made combat go by even faster. By being able to once again build out my squad in a way that they each had different elements and different types of physical attack damage, so that I would always be able to find an enemy's weakness and then just shift to another character and then exploit more weaknesses and just really just mop the floor with all these shadows, you know? And now here is the part where I do have to make a confession. Let's rewind the clock a little bit to Persona 4 Golden, my first Persona experience. Did you guys know you could switch personas mid-combat? Because I didn't. I did not know that was a thing. Okay? And now I know what you're thinking. That's like the whole thing of Persona, that you can switch personas on the fly because your main character can just use any persona. That's like the whole deal. I didn't know that, okay? No one told me this. If it was tutorialized in 4, I didn't read it. It was heavily tutorialized in Persona 3 Reload though. I don't like my world fell apart when I realized you can switch mid-combat. I want to say I remember being aware of that feature in Persona 4 Golden, but I was like, I don't want to waste my turn to switch my persona. It doesn't cost a turn though, is what I've learned. Yeah. Something else, huh? So yeah, in Persona 4 Golden, I used the Izanagi persona the entire game. And I nailed it, so, you know, I went along with it just fine. There was no problem whatsoever. But, you know, like I mentioned before, I do want to replay that game. Now I have another reason to see what the other Personas are like. But yeah, in Persona 3 Reload, and I guess in every Persona game there is, you can switch your persona on the fly, and that allows you to have just a greater range of abilities and attack moves at any given moment, which is a very cool feature. Imagine if I knew that in Persona 4 Golden, how much higher I would be on Persona 4 Golden if I knew that then. Besides the point, now understanding how the personas work in the video game titled Persona, that sounds absurd to say. They're a much more in-depth feature than I would have ever imagined, because what you can do with these personas is you can mix and match them and fuse them together to get stronger personas, and that's like the whole grind of the game that I just never knew existed in Persona 4 Golden. So playing Persona 3 Reload and having that new, not really a new feature at all, but having essentially a new feature to me introduced in this game that really elevated the entire experience, that had me using new abilities, new personas on the fly that I never would have otherwise if I didn't learn of this. So shout out to Persona 3 Reload for having a great tutorial that really introduced me to that. But yeah, with any Persona game, that is only half the battle, the actual battling. The other half, which I didn't really touch much on in Persona 4 Golden, which I wish I would have, looking back on it, if I ever remake that video, maybe I'll touch on it. If they ever release a remake for Persona 4 Golden, it'd be a perfect excuse to do so. Anyways, that's besides the point. We'll cross that bridge when we come to it in like 3 years probably. Anyways, the other half of any Persona game is your social links, your friendships, and all of the relationships you'll make over the course of your 60, 70, 80 hour journey. For me personally, 66 hours. 5 hours longer than I played Persona 4, so, you know, it's interesting to note, because this game technically is before that, and this one doesn't have any of the golden content. For Persona 3 would be the answer content. Fascinating to note that it was a longer runtime, so to speak. Anyways, so in any Persona game, you are introduced to a wide cast of characters who will, some of them be in your party when you go to Tartarus, and some of them are just your pals in class or people around town. And coming directly off of a friend group who I just absolutely adored and fell in love with in Persona 4 Golden, it was going to be a tall order to follow them up in any capacity. But I can at least say that the cast of Persona 3, I liked them. You know what I mean? I liked them. They're all unique characters in their own rights. In a lot of ways, I do see that the Persona games use similar archetypes between the cast members, which is fine and dandy. It gives you that sense of familiarity when you meet them and helps with making you fall in love with them from the get-go. Although I can definitely say that I don't prefer this cast over Persona 4 Golden's cast. I did very much appreciate what most of these cast members had to bring. I won't go into details about my full thoughts on this cast until we get to the spoiler section, but I have some things to say. So if you're into that, be ready for that. The last thing I can say without going into spoilers on this group, on this cast of characters, is that they don't necessarily feel like a friend group to me in the way that the friend group felt like a friend group in Persona 4 Golden. I said friend group way too many times just then. That, of course, is because of the setup of this game where a select amount of people don't turn into coffins. And of course, it is your friend group and all of the people that you go into Tartarus with who don't turn into coffins, who have personas, who are called Cs, which stands for something. I don't remember off the top of my head. I'm Googling it really fast. Which stands for Specialized Extracurricular Execution Squad. And because of that, I never necessarily felt like this cast of characters were all friends, more so a team put together by circumstance. And I'll go into more detail about that later. That's honestly what I would say is this game's biggest flaw. And then beyond that, you do have social links around Iwatodai, whether it's this little girl who's alone in the park. What's she doing? Go figure that out. Go learn her story. Why is this skinny guy talking to her? That seems creepy. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. Find out. It's a whole thing. It's a whole thing. There's a lot going on. While there is a lot going on, there isn't as much going on as there was in Persona 4 Golden, which I do understand completely because technically Persona 4 is the sequel, even though this is the newer game. But you know what I mean. So naturally, I can see a lot of the seeds being planted in Persona 3 that sprouted in Persona 4, so to speak. Something I do want to say about this game is the fact that it is a remake of Persona 3. I didn't really mess with Persona 3, the original, at all. I played Persona 3 Portable for about 1 hour just to see a direct comparison in the opening hour. Of course, it's really quick and easy to do like that. This game is stunning to look at, especially because I came right off of Persona 4 Golden, a game that released in 2011, I think. Going to this game in 2024, it is insane how good Persona 3 Reload looks. The presentation is off the charts. It's just so cool to see this type of game, this type of gameplay in this high fidelity, because of course I don't know what to expect with Persona 5. I still haven't played it. So to me, this is just a massive overhaul of what Persona can look like. And people are really tall, you know? I didn't expect that. In Persona 4 Golden, you get so limited amount of polygons to use. Everyone's really short. I didn't realize how tall everyone is, you know? It's crazy. Anyways, the last thing I do want to say about Persona 3 Reload's story before we get into the actual story spoilers is that the pacing is a little bit weird. Like I said earlier, this game is very goal-oriented, where you're at every moment in the game, you'll know what you're building towards, but sometimes in between that, it's just like, okay, that's it. All right. And the game takes a minute to get going, but once it gets going real good. That is a weird sentence to say. I hope you liked it. I hope it made sense to you. What I can say about it is that Persona 3 Reload has one of the most satisfying build-ups to a climax in recent memory. And that's all I can say, because I don't want to spoil it. It is just one of the most satisfying conclusions I've experienced in a very long time. There's a lot of moments in this game that honestly I thought were just bad, but those do not overshadow the amount of good that is in this game, the amount of great that is in this game even. So yeah, based on that, I highly recommend Persona 3 Reload if you haven't played it yet. If you haven't gone out and got it, it's on Game Pass, so it costs you not much. Although, if you're getting on Game Pass, you might need more than 1 month of Game Pass to do it, so hey, you know. But yeah, those are my thoughts on Persona 3 Reload. This game is far more recent, the most recent game I've done an Overdue review on, so naturally, it's a lot longer than I thought it was going to be. So strap in, because we still have another half of this video to go where we talk about the story spoilers. And there's a lot that happens in this game. So go ahead and get your snackies, because we're still going. If I were to rank the Persona games, and since I am playing all of them at this point, all of the modern Persona games at this point, I might as well rank them. I would definitely say that Persona 4 Golden is still my number 1 and Persona 3 Reload is my number 2. But as I get further and further away from Persona 3 Reload, I'm just loving it more and more. The more I think about it, the more I look back on it, a lot of those bad moments I referred to earlier, they start to sort of just fade away in my memory, and only the great moments are what stick to my memory. So it's getting better and better in my memories of it, to the point where it's honestly a lot closer than I thought it was going to be. I thought Persona 4 was like way better than Persona 3 Reload. But the longer I've sat with it, the closer and closer together they get. Persona 4 Golden still gets that edge because I like the cast of characters more, and you know, you saw the Overdue review on Persona 4 Golden. I don't need to rehash all of that here. But hey, it ended up being a lot closer than I thought it was going to be. But we'll talk more about direct comparisons and my further thoughts in the spoiler section, so I can just unload everything. Oh my god. No, it was a gun thing because you use guns to summon your persona in this game. That's what that meant. That made a lot of sense. Transition into the spoiler section already, for the love of God. Alright, story spoilers from here on out, full spoilers for the entire game. Hopefully I'm not going to be as long-winded as I was in the general impressions actual review portion, because man oh man, this video is long as hell, isn't it? You don't have to watch this all at once. If you are done with the game, hey, come back after you finish and it'll be right here for you. But if you are finished, let's dive in it, shall we? So there are a lot of ways I could go with this in terms of story spoilers, but I feel like the best way to start off is by talking about the friend group. C's, if you will. That's what they're called. You know that. I just want to talk about in more detail why they didn't work for me as well as the investigation team did in P4. Because like I mentioned, this is just a group of characters who are brought together by circumstance, not necessarily because they want to stay friends or anything like that. It's just they're the only people who could do this. Like, there are like no options for them. Like, it's just this group of people who stay conscious during the dark hour. So that's why they're all here. And also they all live together, which initially I would have thought would have helped make this feel more like a cohesive unit, more like a real friend group, but that made it feel more dividing than having everyone live in their own homes. Since everyone lived together, there weren't very many hangouts. There were a few. There was the time where we had sushi, and there was the time we went to the beach. That's all I can really think about. There's the class field trip as well. All in all, I just feel like this game didn't nail necessarily the friendship parts that I've come to love from Persona 4. Now, I don't know whether or not Persona 4 is just the one to really hammer that point in, or if that's something Persona games in general just do, and this one just didn't work for me. Let's talk about the cast of characters, because I'm realizing now I didn't mention them at all in the actual non-spoiler section, not by name at least. There's Yukari, Junpei, Mitsuru, Akihiko, Ken, Aragaki, I think, Fuka, and Aigis. I think I nailed it, in the dog as well. I didn't really like most of them, if I'm being completely honest. It's just the few that I did like, I just liked a lot though. Like, if they were tiered, it would be Yukari, Mitsuru, and Aigis the top tier, S tier, and then A tier is Fuka and Akihiko, and then everyone else, it just kind of crumbles from there on out. Because I didn't like them very much. I don't need to really talk about why I liked the characters I did like, I don't think. I just really need to let it be known why I didn't like what I didn't like. We're going to start by talking about the things I didn't like about this game, and then we're going to just rattle off all of the positive things that I really, really adored in this game. But yeah, Junpei sucked. I didn't like Junpei. He was a dick to me, and I was just like, you're just not fun to be around. He's just... Yukari's right. He's stupid. You know what I mean? I didn't like him. And then we had the whole side plot of his where he fell in love with Chidori from Strega. It's just like, I'm not really feeling this. There are a lot of scenes with just the two of them, and I'm just like, whew, this is a lot. This is a lot of things I don't really care about. But okay, I'm in for the ride. I'm already like 25 hours into this game. But beyond Junpei, I did not like Ken. Honestly, I just tried to act like Ken didn't exist. Because it was, what, summer break, where they're like, oh, here's this kid. He doesn't have a home to go to for summer break. Cool, so we'll just watch over him for a little bit. I was like, all right, I guess that's cool. It's Kutsky, what's his name? It's Kutsky, something like that. It's really hard to pronounce. I was like, all right, I trust you in this point in the game. All right, this Ken kid, I guess he'll be here for the summer, I guess. And then eventually they're like, he can summon a persona. He's gonna join the team. And I was like, wait, I beg your pardon? I beg your pardon, sir? This is a child. A child. Like, an actual child who goes to elementary school. He should be out there having a childhood. I just did not agree with him joining the team whatsoever. At any point, any dialogue option, I was like, hey, this is not good. We shouldn't do this. As much as you can. Obviously, he's going to join regardless. But I was just like, ooh, I feel real icky about having a child risk their life for all of this stuff. You know? He's a child. He doesn't have any actual autonomy over himself. He's just gonna say yes because we're older than him. Anyways, so I was just like very much against Ken being on the team. So I just acted like he wasn't there, which I don't know if that's better or worse. And then Aragaki, don't even get me started on Aragaki. That guy, he just looked mean. So I never talked to him. And then he joined the team and then he died. And I was like, oh, well, dang. Didn't expect that. Didn't know you. Didn't ever talk to you, actually. Because he just also just didn't seem like a character I would have liked. So I didn't talk to him because I was like, I got a lot of other things going on right now, Aragaki. Stop texting me. Stop telling me to meet you in an alleyway. That's what his text messages always said to me. And I'm like, no, I got to talk to Yukari. I got to talk to Fuka. I got to talk to Chihiro. Chihiro. Oh my goodness. But yeah, Aragaki and Ken, they had their plot line, little side plot that they had going on where Aragaki got his mom killed or something or other. I kind of got lost in that because I pretty much forgot they existed until that point. And I was like, oh, man, there's something going on here, huh? And then Aragaki died. And Ken, this little child, was like, I'm gonna kill Aragaki in my own life afterwards. I'm like, Jesus Christ. This game is dark. Like, I didn't mention it earlier unless I went back in the editing and mentioned it at some point. This game is dark, and I didn't mention that. It's crazy how dark it gets in some cases. Everyone gets hung up on a cross at some point as well. Jesus, there's so much death in this game. That's the whole point of this game, turns out. This whole game is just about death and how you deal with it, how it affects you and how it affects others. That's pretty much the entire theme of this game. I'm noticing that these games have like a strong central theme to them that I should really focus in on. Speaking of death, the mysterious boy, hated that guy. Such an annoying little prick of a character, you know what I mean? Every so often, every month, he'd be like, hey, good morning, how's it going? Or good night, it's nighttime, it's a dark hour, hey, how are ya? And I'm like, shut up, you're weird, you're creeping me out. I skipped all his dialogue because it didn't seem important. He seemed so annoying to me, I just didn't want to deal with him. And then, towards the end of the game, we get to our final semester, something or other, and then they just introduce this kid out of nowhere, this really tall, really hot, handsome, good-looking dude with a yellow scarf. And as soon as he introduced himself, I was like, I don't like this kid. I don't like him at all. I don't want anything to do with him. We're too late in the game to be introducing new characters. There's something up with this guy. I don't like him. Aigis was on my side. She was like, there's something fishy about this dude. And I was like, I guess you're right. There is something fishy about this dude. At a certain point, you have to talk to him. And then he's all like, hey, we should be friends. We're in the same class. And I said, no, we shouldn't be friends. And he's like, you're just kidding. And I was like, no, don't talk to me. And then he's like, hey, we're in the same class, so we should have each other's phone numbers. And I was like, no. And then I gave him my phone number anyways. I was like, I was so against him. For good reason, because it turns out he's deaf That's the whole other plot twist upon plot twist in this game that I couldn't even allude to in the first half of this video because spoilers, obviously, where for the first third of the game, you're going through Tartarus and you're leveling up and you're gearing up for the big shadow fights at the beginning of each month, that sort of thing. And then a third of the way through, it's Kutsuki, or whatever his name is. I think I nailed it. He's all like, I'm the bad guy. And you're like, oh no. And then he kills Mitsuru's dad, I think. It's a long game. Okay, I don't necessarily remember everything in correct sequence. And we're all hung up on crosses, and he was like, I'm using Aegis on you guys. Aegis, I created Aegis. It was a whole thing. And then we killed him. The middle third of the game is where I was talking about with the pacing issues of this game. Where in the first third, you're gearing up for those shadow fights at the beginning of every month. And then the last third, that's about when you are introduced to the concept of Nyx and death and all of that. So that middle third, there's not much going on. Not really. There's kind of a lot of aimlessness. Some Strega shenanigans are happening. Obviously, the Skutsuki twist happens around here as well. Around here is when Aragaki dies. And I'm just like, maybe for me personally, it's where the game feels more aimless because I wasn't necessarily connected more to those characters who were taking the spotlight at the time. So maybe that's on me. I can fess up to that. While the end of that middle third did culminate in a great way, it was the getting there that was sort of you know what I mean? Speaking more on death, I think I died at the end of this game. I might have died. I don't know for certain, but I think I died. It was one of those confusing things. Earlier I mentioned how this game has one of the best endings in recent memory. There is an asterisk that I should put on that, and that's the confusion. It's that it was such a brilliant, well-made, it is the perfect, most satisfying build up to a climax. Then the release from there is just one of the most satisfying feelings in a game in a long time, until I got a little confused at the end. I'm like, did I die? Did I die? I don't know. I think I died, but because I'm confused about whether I died or not, it doesn't hit as hard, you know? Because if I died and I knew I died, that'd be like a somber moment. Or if I'm just like, maybe I was just sleepy. I don't know. But because I'm confused, I'm more just like, I guess it's up to your interpretation. And if that's the case, I'm still alive. I was just sleepy. Am I in denial? No. Not at all. Anyways, there's DLC that comes out later this year, so we'll be back here for that. That'll be fun. I will do another video on that. But before we get too caught up in the future, let's talk about Chihiro. Okay, I didn't realize this when I played Persona 4 Golden, but in Persona 4 Golden, you all know, hopefully, I hope you do. Minor spoilers for Persona 4 Golden if you haven't played Persona 4 Golden, you've only played Persona 3 Reload. You go on a field trip in Persona 4 Golden, and in that field trip, you go to Iwatodai. At this point in time, when I was playing Persona 4 Golden, I hadn't played Persona 3. I had no idea what was going on in Persona 3. Turns out this field trip was a little Easter egg for all of the longtime fans of Persona, or more particularly, fans of Persona 3, where you got to go to Gekukan, you got to see all those teachers. You got to see Chihiro, who was a first year in Persona 3, and by the time you see her in Persona 4 Golden, she's class president, which is cool to see because in Persona 3 Reload, she's just joined. She's a first year. So it's cool to see that progression for her. And to realize, as I'm playing Persona 3 Reload, oh snap, that was an Easter egg. That's cool. And Club Escapade was in the field trip in Persona 4 Golden. So when I got there in Persona 3 Reload, I just had a moment where I started crying a little bit, you know? Memories that haven't happened yet because this game takes place 2 years before, I think. But you know what I mean? I didn't get the chance to talk about Strega at all because I feel like that is sort of spoilery to talk about them as an anti-U agenda thing group, and they're weird. You know, they're a weird group of characters. I feel like I didn't get enough time with each of them to really understand them. Also, Chidori, no, let's back it up a second. Junpei dies, and then Chidori's like, no, I'll die. And then later in the game, we find out Chidori's like, I didn't die actually, instead I'm alive. So that was weird. While I was getting footage for this video, I learned that Chidori can die, and it's just because I did the correct things. I took the correct steps that resulted in her being revived by the end of the game. So that's pretty cool. Didn't know that was a thing. So a lot of things happen in this game, okay? Another thing, let's talk about Nyx again. This Nyx fella, right? We talked about meeting this guy, this character who turns out to be Mysterious Boy, Nyx. That whole thing, you know the deal. You've played the game, you know what's up. We run into him towards the end of the game and he lays it all out for us. Hey, Nyx is gonna come and kill everyone. You can either kill me right now and forget about everything that's ever happened, or you can try to fight Nyx on Judgment Day and you will die because Nyx is gonna kill you, because Nyx is all powerful. Nyx is Satan himself or something or other. And then it's just like, you get to Judgment Day. If you don't kill him then and there, you get to Judgment Day, and then Yukari's like, man, it's crazy. We're gonna go fight Nyx and then we're gonna lose our memories. I'm like, what? What do you mean? I thought the whole thing was if we killed what's his face, Mysterious Boy earlier, we would lose our memories. But if we fought Nyx, we wouldn't lose our memories. And then she just goes, no, we'll lose our memories if we fight Nyx. I'm like, well, what are we doing then? What's the point? I thought the whole point was that we won't lose our memories. And I guess the point is that, you know, Nyx doesn't destroy the world. That's kind of important too, I guess. But that kind of came out of left field for me. So that's what I mean in terms of there's a lot of good, a lot of bad, but a lot of great. Because from then on out, once the stakes are in play, and then you go into Tartarus and you do that final like 10 floors of Tartarus where you fight the remaining members of Strega, and then it leads into a fight with Nyx. Oh my god, the boss fight, the final boss. We'll call it the final boss because there's, you know, the final boss with Nyx, where you're on the rooftop. You make it to the roof of Tartarus, this tower that you've been climbing for 66 hours of game time. You're finally at the top and you see the moon, you see the green sky. It's just so cool. It's a really, and like I mentioned earlier, the presentation of this game is off the chain. It looks so good. Unbelievable how good this game looks. And then you fight Nyx, and it's like a whole marathon sort of fight where you realize that you do one bit of damage to Nyx, and then you're like, hey, that took his health down like a lot. That can't be right? What's going on here? And then Nyx switches his tarot card, and then he switches it again, and then he keeps switching his tarot card, and I'm like, oh man, there are 20 of those. This is going to be a really long boss fight. And I got a little worried there. But he only went up to 13 because that's where death is. And Nyx is death. And it's really cool because the music is taking the Velvet Room theme and just like amping it up. And it's just so cool. It's a really climactic cinematic fight, which makes it one of the coolest like rises to a climax to the release, like I mentioned. And then you, the main character, just go floating into the sky, kind of like at the end of Doctor Strange 1, when Doctor Strange does that to go talk to Dormammu. You do that to go talk to Death, Nyx, even though we were fighting Nyx. There's a lot going on. You go up there, and then this sick ass music starts playing, Burn Your Dread. And then you're just getting all of these flashes of all of your social links that you've maxed out, like cheering you on in this moment where you're just fighting Nyx, and it's really cool. And then you die, I think, but not really. And then we all forget everything until graduation day, when Mitsuru is in the middle of her speech and she's like, ah, shit, I forgot, but I remembered it all of a sudden right now. We all did, everyone in the audience. but Aegis and the main character already remembered because we were already on the roof. There's a lot going on. When I break it down out loud, it sounds messier than it is, but it was really satisfying to experience the first time because you're just happy that they have their memories back, because there was a worry that maybe they don't remember this and that sucks, but they do. And it's a great moment where they all just start running to the rooftop, and it's just like, I like most of you, so this is a really cool moment. And then I fell asleep or died. And that's Persona 3 Reload. Beyond that, now that I finished Persona 3 Reload and Persona 4 Golden, naturally, all roads lead to the next game. And that game, of course, is Persona 4 Arena Ultimax. Yep, I'm including it because I'm playing all these Persona games, and Persona 4 Arena Ultimax is apparently a sequel to both Persona 3 and Persona 4, and now that I've played Persona 3 and Persona 4, I can play it. So that's likely to be the next Overdue review because, yeah, of course, all roads do in fact lead to Persona 5 Royal. I'm also going to be doing Persona 5 Royal after that, or while I'm doing that. Like, I'm going to be bouncing between those two games because they're different enough that I feel like I'm not going to get them mixed up in any way, right? And Persona 5 Royal is going to be a task to finish, I imagine. I've heard people say that Persona is a 100-hour game, and that was based off of Persona 5. So to get to Persona 5 after all of this time, I imagine that's going to be the time where it's like 100 hours. And I know so much more about Persona than I did when I first started playing these games, so I'm going to try to experience as much as possible and not just join one club like I did in Persona 4 Golden. I'm going to fuse all these personas and use different personas, unlike how I did in Persona 4. And the thing that I haven't done that I'm going to do for Persona 5 is utilize every team member. Because in Persona 4 Golden, I stuck with Yosuke, Yukiko, and Chie the whole way through. And then Persona 3 Reload, I stuck with Yukari, Akihiko, and Mitsuru the whole way through. And everyone else kind of got left to the wayside in terms of like leveling and stuff. I'd still talk to everyone and all of that, of course, but I didn't really mess with their personas and all of that. So I'll be sure to dabble with that in Persona 5 Royal, and I'm looking forward to it. But I'm also worried about it because everyone's been hyping this one up. So that's why I saved it for last. Save the best for last. Because if it is the best, I wouldn't want to start there and then experience lesser games afterwards. Once again, it goes like this: Persona 4 Golden, and right underneath that, closer than I would have thought. Like, obviously there's only 2 slots, but it's really close. Persona 3 Reload. Like I said, the further I get away from Persona 3 Reload, the more the bad starts to fade from memory, and the more the good just starts to stick out. So I don't think it's ever going to be my preference over Persona 4 Golden, but hey, these games are great. I don't know if you knew that. These games are so good. My only fear with Persona 5 Royal is that I don't know if I'm gonna like these guys, you know? And I hope I do. It's kind of bullshit, if we're being completely honest with ourselves, that Persona 4 and Persona 3 had to share one spin-off game, whereas Persona 5 gets 2 spin-off games on their own, you know? So I hope I like the cast, because they have 2 spin-off games, so I'm going to spend a lot of time with them. We'll see how it goes, but that's not going to be for quite some time. Until then, though, click on another video, leave a comment on this one, leave a like on this one, and as always, until next time, stay safe and play some video games.